Now, ever since the prequels came out, I've seen many people use those films to make arguments against the Jedi and their ways or philosophies. They'll say that their flaws get exposed and are even used to lure them into a war they couldn't possibly win, that they are in large part to blame for Palpatine's rise to power. Along with this, I'll also see some people, oftentimes the same people, making the claim that Qui-Gon Jinn was some kind of renegade or gray Jedi because he trusted and let his own instincts guide him in the moment, rather than strictly following the Jedi Code or the instructions of the Council. They'll even say that this is then what a Jedi should actually be, that they should be more gray. And to be blunt here, I'm not sure how they miss what seems so obvious, how they miss the whole point and kind of get it all backwards, because it wasn't Qui-Gon that was some sort of misguided Jedi, but rather the Council and the rest of the Jedi were the ones who had actually lost their way. They had become so wrapped up in their code, their rules, and following the will of the Republic, and by Republic I mean the instructions of the Senate, that they were no longer simply following the will of the Force like Qui-Gon always did, and trusting in his own feelings and instincts, or listening to that little voice he hears talking to him through the midichlorians. Not that I think he's literally hearing the Force speak to him that way, but again, the midichlorians do convey the will of the Force, essentially. Anyway, though, yeah, this is all something I've been talking about for years at this point, and will no doubt again at some point in the future. I was nevertheless pleasantly surprised to see it all brilliantly highlighted in the Dooku episodes or Dooku story arc of Tales of the Jedi. And so in this video, I'd like to take a closer look at the first episode in that story arc, the one called Justice, where we begin to understand not only why Dooku eventually leaves the Jedi Order, but why Qui-Gon Jinn becomes the Jedi that he does, one that doesn't always see eye to eye, or follow the instructions of the Council either. And so this episode starts with a younger Dooku and a Padawan-aged Qui-Gon Jinn arriving on a rather bleak-looking planet where they soon come to a rundown, impoverished town where no one seems to be all too interested in talking or interacting with them. They then enter the local bar or tavern and inquire as to the whereabouts of a child and ask where they are holding the senator's son. When an older woman asks why they should tell them, Dooku sits down and tells her he wants to make his intentions clear and starts by placing his lightsaber on the table, which first shows them that he is a Jedi, which the woman comments on, and also shows them that he has no interest in hurting anyone, yet at the same time it is a subtle reminder that yes, he is quite capable of it if need be. Dooku then says that he is here to help resolve the situation, which makes the old woman ask if he's here to do that for the senator, meaning she's asking if he is on his side or the side of the Senate and to do their bidding, which really begins to show you what the everyday average person might just think about the Jedi at this point in time, that they are some sort of enforcement arm of the Republic or the Senate. So just imagine what they'll eventually think of them when they become generals for the Republic during the Clone Wars. To this question, though, it's Qui-Gon Jinn who says they're here for everyone, meaning they have no interest in taking sides, only trying to do what is right for all parties involved. This is in stark contrast to the sort of attitude we'll see out of Mace Windu in the next episode, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. And so anyway, the old woman then asks what they know of Senator Dagonet, and it's Qui-Gon that replies that he is one of the longest standing senators in the Republic. To that the woman says that on the way in, on their way through the village or town, they got to see all the good that has come from his long years of service and policies. Qui-Gon asks why they don't just vote him out, and the woman goes on to say it's not that simple, and that perhaps once upon a time, the senator was a good man who cared about the people. And this could lead to a very long and interesting conversation about everything from term limits to how power has a tendency to corrupt even those who initially have good intentions, like Dooku for example, to why Jedi do not allow themselves attachments. Because here we're talking about a career politician who, as she says, maybe once cared and did what was right for the people, but now clearly only cares about himself. He doesn't use his position of power to help others, but only to help himself. He has lost his way at this point. And this is essentially one of the reasons why Jedi do not allow themselves attachments. They don't allow themselves to care about personal possessions or personal gain over the well-being of others, or to put any single person's well-being, someone they love for example, over anyone else's well-being. They only ever care about trying to help other people and do what is right for everyone, setting their own personal interests aside. They basically never want to lose sight of their purpose, that being helping others or helping bring balance to the galaxy. which goes along with what Qui-Gon said before, that they're here for everyone, that they're not just here to help the Senator or find his son, but to do whatever turns out to be the right thing to do for anyone and everyone involved. Qui-Gon has already learned from Dooku that you must make good decisions in the moment, not just follow your mandate or the instructions of the Jedi Council, which all too often is handed down to them from the Senate. And we soon learn that, well, they are all involved in the kidnapping, that after the woman says she'll take them to the Senator's son, and Qui-Gon seems a bit surprised that she knows where he is, and that it must make her in league with the kidnappers at the very least. Everyone else in the tavern stands up, and Dooku figures out really fast that they are all the kidnappers, that they're all in it together, and they're not afraid to confess it because at this point, they clearly have nothing left to lose. After then being taken to the Senator's son, it's Qui-Gon who promises to him that his ordeal will be over soon, but the kid responds that what he's going through is nothing compared to their ordeal, basically saying a couple days locked up in a barn with a giant droid named Teuton is nothing compared to what these people have been experiencing for, well, clearly quite some time at this point. Dooku then asks if the kid is aware of these conditions, or was aware of these conditions beforehand, and the kid says he wasn't, that he rarely leaves the capital, and when he does, it's to go off-world to Coruscant. Which, again, we could make some real-world comparisons here, couldn't we? About how elected officials, not that the kid is an elected official, but his father is, how they oftentimes don't actually, shall we say, mingle with the people who elected them, who they represent, other than when they're looking to be re-elected, and instead they use their position to live the good life and their power to serve only their well-being or their lavish lifestyle. We then have Qui-Gon commenting and being surprised that the kid doesn't seem upset that he's been abducted, which he confirms by saying, "What choice did they have?" That's what the kid says to Qui-Gon, which yet again can lead to all sorts of interesting moral questions, I think. I mean, obviously kidnapping is never right, but when you have no other recourse, what else were they supposed to do? What else were they supposed to do to bring attention to their plight? It's kind of like, to a degree anyway, that age-old question about, is, say, stealing a loaf of bread from a rich person to feed a starving child wrong, even if that rich person won't ever miss it or even notice you took it? And even though you can certainly argue the answer is always yes, that stealing is always wrong no matter the circumstance, we could also ask why the rich person doesn't simply share something they don't actually need with someone who does genuinely need it. We could even take it all the way down to the core or root idea of Star Wars itself, that being selfless versus selfish, and how the Jedi are supposed to be the epitome of one, and how the Sith are the epitome of the other. And how life, for both those in the Star Wars galaxy and us here in the real world, is a battle between the two. It's about finding balance between selfless and selfish, a balance between giving to and helping others versus helping yourself and keeping the things you want. Because, I mean, we all have things we need and want in life, and we all should have the right to pursue our dreams and our best life, and to live how we choose or see fit. But the difficult question is what happens when those individual pursuits for the things we want conflict with each other, or hinder the greater good, or keep people from acquiring the things they simply need to survive. How much is too much for one person to acquire, like the senator in the story, when others are starving and living in poverty? And who gets to determine these things? Who makes the rules about how much is too much, and then who enacts those rules? And what should be done about those who are determined or deemed to be too selfish? How do you punish someone for rightfully earning something and then being unwilling to share it? Which isn't to say the senator has earned everything he has, but certainly some or many people do earn everything they have acquired in life. And so you could argue the real problem here is you can't legislate compassion. I mean, you can make the laws if you want. You can make laws that say be nice to each other, but you can't force people to like and care about each other. You also can't force people to willingly give to each other. You can only hopefully foster compassion in others by being compassionate yourself, which is what the Jedi in many ways try to do. They try to lead by example. They don't expect everyone to live as they do completely selflessly, but hopefully that example will encourage others to be selfless to some degree themselves. Anakin's talk about compassion in Episode 2 is actually quite fantastic. One of the best parts of the prequels when you really just strip it down for the message it conveys, even if in that moment he's sort of trying to use it to justify his pursuit of Padme. This is then, in a sense, the dilemma Dooku is or will face when the senator shows up, which he does with a small security force. how far should he go to help these people against someone who is rightfully elected by them, but not actually serving them? What is the right and fair course of action for all parties involved here? Keeping in mind the townsfolk, did kidnap the senator's son, and he very much has a right to demand his son's freedom. No one can argue against that. Not that, again, they felt like they had much of a choice otherwise, which gets highlighted again by a woman having led the senator here to this barn where they're keeping the senator's son in exchange for some food. And though she looks ashamed of herself, she looks like she feels like she betrayed everyone else, the old woman from before simply says that many others would do the same, that she doesn't blame her for doing whatever she had to do to eat, because she's done the very same thing herself by being a part of the kidnapping of the senator's son. Either way, the senator orders Dooku to arrest all these people, all these townsfolk, but he refuses and says his investigation is not yet complete. The senator is incredulous and says there is nothing here to investigate, that they are criminals and his son should be released now, and to an extent he is right. They have broken a very obvious law. You shouldn't kidnap. But Dooku only assures him that his son is in no immediate danger, which is when the senator orders his security force to take back his son. And there's a key moment here when Qui-Gon looks at Dooku, of course wondering how his master will handle this delicate situation. And this is a critical moment for Qui-Gon Jinn, and will no doubt go a long way in shaping the type of person or type of Jedi he will ultimately become, the Jedi he is in Episode 1. The senator then orders Dooku to step aside, which he of course refuses to do. The senator then says, or reminds him that you serve the Senate, but Dooku says no, he serves the people of this republic, which is a great moment because, yeah, as we've been discussing, this is very much what the Jedi on the whole should be doing. This is where they've gone wrong. They should not be serving the will of the Senate, they should be serving the people of the republic. This is also why, in theory, cooperation between the Jedi and the Senate is not inherently a bad thing. If they're both on the same page about who and what should come first, that the people should always come first, and what is best for the galaxy on the whole should come first, well then there is no problem with the two sort of cooperating. But here we see a senator confronted with the horrible conditions that his people are living in, and though, yeah, he's concerned about his son's safety, he's not at all questioning why they kidnapped him in the first place, and why a Jedi is now defying his orders. The senator then commands his men to fire, and once more Qui-Gon looks to his master for his decision, what they should do. Once more, the fate of Qui-Gon is very much being decided in this moment as well. Dooku then ignites his lightsaber, and Qui-Gon follows suit. A firefight begins, and the townsfolk, even with the Jedi on their side, are clearly outmatched or outgunned because the Jedi are obviously reluctant to truly use force against the senator and his men. However, after several of the townsfolk have been shot, the senator orders his men to cease fire, in large part to give Dooku time to reflect and to do what is right in his opinion, to realize he can't save these people, and to stand down and give back his son. It's the only course of action he has, otherwise more people will be needlessly hurt. But after Dooku does and says nothing, the senator says he will destroy this town and the people of it, as well as anyone else who defies him, which is maybe a bit much, but does convey the message, which is that, yeah, the exact opposite of what the senator is supposed to do is happening here. He is not caring about his people at all. He clearly only has power in mind, and it is gone to his head. And so Dooku, no surprise, he's not having any of it and begins to force choke the senator. When Qui-Gon simply calls out Master in a questioning way, he gets force pushed by Dooku, and we see the dark side is now seeping in. That power is going to his head as well, or the need to do something by any means necessary. Even though, yeah, Dooku is more or less in the right here. Not the choking part, I mean, but he's right to defend the people against tyranny. His job is, again, to defend the people of the Republic, not to follow the orders of the Senate or a particular senator. As Dooku then advances on the senator, taking out troopers along the way by reflecting blaster bolts back at them, Qui-Gon has the idea to free the senator's son in order to, as he tells him when he cuts him free, to save his father, but also, in a sense, to save Dooku from himself, from going too far and doing something that he is going to regret, and that is definitely going to lead him down the dark path. And so when Dooku is on the verge of finishing off the senator, telling him corruption like his must be eradicated, which he's not wrong again, that's when the son steps in front of him, pleading for him to stop, and when Qui-Gon puts his hand on Dooku's shoulder and tells him it's over. Dooku is then finally able to stop himself to free himself from the tendrils of the dark side for now. The senator's son then questions his father about how he could do this to his own people, and the father has no answer, at which point Dooku simply walks away, leaving Qui-Gon there to look back and forth between the two, between his master and what his master has done, trying to figure out if what he just did was right, wrong, or somewhere in between, if there was possibly a better way to handle this whole situation. In the end then, the son promises the people of the town that he will not let their suffering continue before riding off with his father. They, the townsfolk, seem, of course, grateful for the help of the Jedi. And when the two Jedi are left alone to talk, Dooku ponders aloud if any meaningful change will come of all this, which is the most prophetic part of the whole episode. Qui-Gon then asks him if that's why he took matters into his own hands to see change come about. And it's Dooku who essentially says he, Qui-Gon, is the true hero here, that his actions saved many lives, and that he is a much wiser man than he is, which Qui-Gon then thanks to his teachings. The two then walk into the gloomy fog together, and the episode ends. And what a brilliant episode this was. It may have been short and to the point, but what a well-made point it was. As I said earlier, this not only shows the foundations of the Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn would ultimately become, a Jedi who always seeks to do what is right, but is a bit more calm and tempered in the moment and is more aware of his feelings than Dooku, but it really begins to explain why Dooku will fall and leave the Jedi Order. And it's almost a shame that Dooku seems so evil in the Clone Wars animated series after an arc like this one, and after not being presented as such a bad guy in Attack of the Clones either, that he laments that Qui-Gon is no longer around because he could use his help, implying he truly believes Qui-Gon would be on his side during this war, which is an interesting question to ponder, isn't it? How would Qui-Gon Jinn have reacted to the Clone Wars? But alas, the over-evil Dooku in the Clone Wars can be explained away easily enough by the fact that the dark side corrupts everything and everyone it touches. Just look how far Anakin falls. That even a desire to do what is right and to help others must be tempered by restraint and a good judgment, or you will become the very thing you swore to destroy. That in the end, Dooku's genuine desire to help others became a selfish need to be the one who, as this episode was called, dishes out justice. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of this episode. Did you, despite how short it was, did you enjoy how much depth it gave to the characters of Qui-Gon and Dooku? How it began to show the flaws of the Senate, and how it seeped into and created flaws in the Jedi that served the Senate, rather than simply serving the people of the Republic? Whatever the case may be, leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.